Representative Jim Struzzi joins us this morning. Our conversation brought to us by Marcus and Mack, a law firm representing injured people. We've learned of a so-called secret deal between the Wolf administration and the operators of a car show out east. On the face of it, very disturbing. He actually is sitting there with the copy of that agreement in front of him and in a remote studio here this morning. State Representative Jim Struzzi, good morning. Is it as disturbing as it appears to be?
Well, good morning, Todd, and thank you for having me on. And yes, I do believe that it is very disturbing, and I think it speaks to the reason why so many people are frustrated with these mandates and recommendations when clearly what happened in Carlisle in June goes against everything they are telling us not to do.
Wow. So 20,000 people showing up to this thing?
Yeah, essentially this occurred in June. They allowed 20,000 people, or 50% of the Carlisle Fairgrounds capacity, to attend this event in spring. It's the annual Carlisle car show. And I think that the thing that really angers me and that should anger a lot of people is across the state, we're canceling fairs, we're canceling high school graduations, we're canceling other events, and they allow this to occur. Where is the science that they so often quote when you're allowing this to occur? What really irks me is, where is the fairness in this? Just today, people are learning that they're canceling the PA Farm Show. Last night, I was at the event to award the scholarships that were normally awarded at the Indiana County Fair. And it was a great event for the two individuals that received the Dawn White Scholarship and the other scholarship from the milk producers. But it's so frustrating to me that these things happen in secret. And this agreement was only obtained through a right to know request. So this wouldn't even be public knowledge right now. And again, I think it's why so many people are frustrated, because if it's science, then how can this occur? If it's science, then why can't we have our events? What rules are we following here? And it seems so unfair that people they come out with a recommendation that no one should be allowed to attend high school sporting events. How does that fit in with this? If 20,000 people were allowed to go to a fairgrounds, it really frustrates me, Todd. And I think that anyone who's listening or anyone who sees these stories should be equally frustrated and should be reaching out to beg for fairness here, to beg for common sense. This has gone far enough. You, as I mentioned, have that agreement right in front of you even as we speak. Are there any items in there that particularly are outrageous, that really jump out at you, or is it just the whole nature of the thing? Well, I think that it's the fact that it occurred in secret, that, again, this was obtained through a right-to-know request. It wasn't public information. And they're canceling things across the board, telling people that you can't have your wedding, you can't have your graduation, you can't have anything that has more than so many people. And here we are allowing an event to occur at 50% capacity, which is 20,000 people. I mean, we could be having IUP football games. We could be having events at the Kovalchik complex. We could be doing all these things according to these rules. What are we supposed to follow here? And I think it just speaks to the lack of thought that's gone into a lot of these restrictions and these mandates that are essentially rules that people are afraid to break for fear of liability. Again, this gets to the whole back to school thing. If it's okay for them to have 250 people in a building at the Carlisle event and 20,000 people on the fairgrounds, then why can't we have the Indiana County Fair? Why can't we be doing all these things that help support our fire companies and our nonprofits? You have to scratch your head when stuff like this comes forward. And again, it gets to the lack of transparency since this pandemic started, this pandemic response from the administration. We want to know why these decisions were made. And as you find out stuff like this, it just compounds the frustration that people have.
What do you anticipate will happen in Harrisburg next week now that this has come to light?
Well, I see a lot of back and forths from my colleagues now that we have seen this agreement, and it's been in the headlines this morning. I know that H.R. 836, the bill to end the disaster declaration to give the Voice of Pennsylvania residents and the the General Assembly, more of a voice was officially vetoed by the governor. So I suspect that will come back to us, and we will re-vote it, hopefully to gain a veto-proof majority. But I think, Todd, there's so much frustration right now, so much animosity, even in our own community, with the mask mandate, and they don't want people to walk down the street by themselves without wearing a mask. And yet here you have the governor's administration, and I believe this is an agreement with the Department of Health, saying it's okay for 20,000 people to be on at a fairground for a car show. Yeah. And it's a car show, and people are missing monumental moments in life. Weddings, graduations, sporting events for their children, and they're not going to get that back. And to me, this is just preposterous.
Governor Wolf uses quite often the deliberate phrase having to do with the PIAA about it's a strong recommendation.
Right.
There is some power behind those words, and you used the word liability earlier, and that is what it's related to. There's some real power behind what Wolf says. He said it with a shrug of the shoulders the other day. It's just a suggestion. It's not just a suggestion, is it?
No, it is not. And if you had any opportunity, or any of the listeners had an opportunity to listen to the joint hearing yesterday with the Senate and House Education Committees, they had Secretary Rivero and Secretary Levine on the call. And they questioned them about some of these decisions and these recommendations. And quite frankly, Todd, they had no answers. And they had no numbers to back up why these recommendations were made. And that was one of the key points. The school administrators are put over a barrel. When the governor makes recommendations, that opens the door for lawsuits if you don't follow them. And let's face it, his recommendations are mandates. And the haphazard way that they did that last week, and the haphazard way they're approaching high school sports, makes no sense. And so I am co-sponsoring a bill to provide some immunity for school districts and businesses during this process, so that you bring kids back to school without some sort of limited liability, you're going to open the door to lawsuits. And when the governor is out there recommending things at the end of press conferences without any data to back them up, it frightens people. And unfortunately, you see what happened. All these school districts, these school administrators work for weeks and months to develop back-to-school plans, and then at the last second they have to change them. And that frustrates me as well. I want to do what's right for the health of everyone, but if they can't even back up their own science, and this agreement speaks to that, then what are we doing? Because it's frustrating to me that people in this community are divisive towards each other over this whole mask thing. And if there's no science, then I don't understand the rationale for a lot of these decisions, and I think this really shines a light on the fact that this administration is making decisions that really don't make any common sense. If you're going to allow 20,000 people on a fairground, then we should be allowed to do a lot of other things in life that we can safely do in this community.
The contradictory nature of this and so many other decisions coming out of the Wolf administration, and this is an agreement from June that we're talking about that was done in secret, seems to suggest that there may be other things that needs a little bit of light shown upon them, and that there may be other deals like this that are in place that we're going to slowly learn about. And I would assume that from a legal standpoint that there could be some trouble coming.
Well, there certainly could, Todd, and I think you hit the nail right on the head there. When you look at something like this, where essentially a waiver is allowed for one large event, it goes back to the whole business waiver process at the beginning of this pandemic response, where one business was allowed to open, others were not. Where's the rationale in that? How were those decisions made? And I think you're going to see a lot of this becoming public information as more right-to-know requests are filed. And we see these things where it doesn't seem to make any sense, where one event is favored over another, or one business is favored over another business being allowed to open. What was the process in that? Everyone wants to talk about data and scientific evidence and this and that. Where is it that allows these things to occur? Because I don't see it, and it doesn't make sense to me. And again, we want to do what's right for everyone, but that includes being equally fair to everyone. And this is evidence that did not occur.
Well, there was evidence of that as well with the right-to-know request having to do with the PA Athletic Oversight Committee, in which the State Health Department, Dr. Levine said moments before that hearing was held that, no, we don't have any data. There is no data because Pennsylvania's not had sports, and so we had to rely on data from other states, but then declined to say what states, what data.
Exactly. And that's the point I'm trying to make is they're making these recommendations and these mandates without any substantial data to back up the decisions. Now, I understand no one has been through this before, and if they're looking at other states, that's fine. But when you say one thing and then you do another, that really doesn't help instill confidence in people that these are the right decisions to make. And the lack of transparency, and as we're starting to see that come out, it's frustrating to people. And I hear so many stories around Indiana right now of people, angry at each other for wearing a mask or not wearing a mask or not keeping their distance and this and that. And it's frustrating to me because we are going off of the word of the governor. And when these kind of things occur, that really doesn't make you feel confident in their recommendations or their mandates.
Well, when times are uncertain as they are, one would think that would want someone to say, all right, let's find out more. Let's bring more people in and involve them in the process. Instead, the Wolf administration has closed off all other arguments. They say we're the only voice that counts.
Yeah, and it's heartbreaking, Todd. It really is. I've heard from so many parents and families that have missed life events that they'll never get back. These high school seniors around Indiana County and around this Commonwealth that they're working hard to get ready for their senior years, or they're training for sporting events, and there's so much uncertainty and fear. And these young people, again, that hearing yesterday, I mean, there was so much good testimony, but they're never going to get these things back, and it's gonna affect generations. And I think there needs to be more gravity given to these decisions before they're haphazardly thrown out at the end of a press conference.
Yeah. Okay. So the agreement really coming to light now. Folks are going to be reacting to this more and more. Senator Joe Pittman will join us tomorrow morning to talk further on this as well. As you head into a weekend and think about what's happening in Harrisburg and what portends for the next couple of weeks, this will certainly be one of those issues that really is a conversation changer. What else is going to be happening?
Well, we're going to be dealing with a lot of COVID-related bills. Again, I mentioned the immunity bill. I believe that we may have the chance to revote the resolution to end the disaster declaration. I will be heading to Harrisburg for a human services hearing on the impacts on drug addiction and overdose rates. Because as I mentioned to you, I think last time I was on, there's so many mental and behavioral health concerns that come from the stress of this COVID pandemic, the isolation. All these things need to be talked about and addressed, and it can't wait because the problems on society are going to compound with every day that this continues. Absolutely.
All right. Representative Struzzi, I want to thank you for coming in this morning. You are, as we should point out, in a remote studio, so we are physically distanced from each other, but you made a special effort to get down here today, and I appreciate it.
Thank you, Todd.
Have a great day. Have a great day.